back to our origin of We the People. Tackling current issues, both political and legal, with common sense. As We the People, we must bring common sense back to make our lives better. Only on Now Media TV.
Welcome to We the People. I'm Alina Gonzalez Dockery. Tonight, we're tackling one of the most polarizing issues in American politics, as well as some of the legal aspects, and that is immigration. It's a subject that dominates the headlines today, divides policymakers, and stirs up strong emotions on both sides of the aisle. But beyond the political battles are real people, families fighting to stay together, businesses struggling to find workers, and communities navigating the consequences of these federal policies. And I am thrilled to welcome attorney Maria Elizabeth Trefonas, founder of Trefonas Law PC, who is going to cut through the noise and educate all of us as what to expect. And one of the great things, and thank you, Maria, for joining me, is that she is a Wyoming-based firm dedicated exclusively to criminal immigration and family law aspects. And this is a trifecta of a legal areas that do each have really almost a familial type of joining for that. And for nearly 2 decades, Maria has represented families, individuals, and businesses across the country, guiding them through one of the most complex areas of law with expertise and compassion. So, Maria, welcome.
Thank you so much, Alina. It's nice to be here with you today. How are you?
I am great. Thank you. So before I get into what I call my little geek out lawyer mode of learning more about your legal expertise, first, I would love for you to share a little bit more about you and your law firm and what sets your practice apart from, others, especially in the Wyoming area.
Sure. Thank you so much. So I have 2 decades worth of experience in that intersection between criminal immigration and family law, and they do intersect, right? Sometimes someone might get pulled over for a no driver's license ticket, and that triggers a situation with immigration. And an immigration situation might trigger a situation with family law. We like to tell people, as you know, that that family law aspect is separate from your federal status. So marriages, divorces, custodies, adoptions, that's a state law based situation, but these do intersect, and that makes sense because humans, we intersect in our lives, and these things all interplay. What sets me apart is I'm originally from California, licensed both in California and Wyoming. As an immigration attorney, I can be in immigration courts all over the country. I'm also bilingual, and that's somewhat rare in Wyoming, although 30% of our local population is Spanish speaking. So when I got here 20 years ago, I was quite the novelty that I was bilingual. Coming from San Diego was my last stop before I got to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And that initially set me apart very, very quickly. And then being the only person at that time that had any immigration expertise on where people were going when they were in ICE custody, and educating my community and my local judges about that very quickly set me apart. And I've stayed ahead of that curve ever since.
And first of all, kudos. I love the fact, that you're bilingual and stuff. It is interesting because I'm in an area where, though we have a 30% Hispanic community, there's not that many bilingual attorneys,
Right.
especially like in family law and in guardianship. I believe I may be the only one. So I understand that there's that niche too. But one of the things that I think I'm going to grasp on is the fact that you're educating your judges, because that is something that's happening that we're seeing more and more, especially in this current administrative climate that we have, is that there is this now specter that is supposed to be federal coming in and seeping into all aspects of what would normally be a state action, like family law, divorce, handling time sharing, things of that. How would you educate your client or would-be clients, your audience, as to what they can expect and how best to traverse the family law versus what may be coming in on the federal level?
The very first thing is to try to get in touch with someone who's knowledgeable about what those intersections are, to give an attorney a call that you trust. And from my perspective, an attorney you trust is someone who's going to tell you this is the bottom line. This is the right information. I'm not here to give you rainbows and unicorns if that's not what exists. My job is to tell you the lay of the land, what cards are in your hand, and how to play them to the best of your advantage. But ultimately, you need to speak with someone who knows how to explain to you what's really going on so that you can make good decisions for yourself and your family with facts, not with promises or hope that doesn't maybe exist. I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy, but I mitigate worst case scenarios. And so reaching out to someone who you can trust and has that knowledge is really first and foremost. How you find that person, sit down with them and talk with them and ask them the tough questions and make sure you're getting that tough answer back that you should be getting from somebody.
And absolutely, you have to be forthcoming, and your attorney shouldn't be all about rainbows and unicorns. As I told you off air when we were talking, I tend to tell prospective clients, you're either going to love me or you're going to decide not to come with me, because I'm going to provide you, blunt, straightforward, maybe a little bit too blunt, of what all the case scenarios could be. Um, so obviously, immigration is often presented as a political fight. It's seeping into every aspect, it seems like now, especially in the legal field. And you're seeing it. You're on the front line. You're dealing with this with family, and the fact that you had that criminal background as well. So, from your vantage point, from your expertise, what recent policies or debates are having the greatest impact on your clients right now?
hmm Sure. The state of Wyoming, very specifically, is harsh with undocumented visitors that are here, particularly with whether or not you can drive with an out-of-state driver's license. Our laws changed in July. But what we're seeing, sort of on more of a national level, is, when someone's taken into custody, what does that look like for the family? How do we get that plan together with the individual that is in custody? So we very much are educating our people to have a phone number that you can call that, there's going to be a person on the other line that's going to answer it if you find yourself in custody, to have that power of attorney put together for who's paying your rent, who's picking up your paycheck, who's picking up your children at school, and to have some of that emergency plan in place, and to know that there are ways to defend a deportation, seek bond from ICE, and maybe even fix your undocumented status to documented status, or preserve what might be an already documented status through the immigration court rules and procedures and due process of law.
And this is what, okay, I'm in awe of you, by the way, because not only are you dealing with immigration, which is federal, then the criminal, I mean, they intersect, however, they're so completely diverse with family and such. And your firm handles some of the most sensitive cases, from asylum seekers to survivors of domestic violence, and assisting them in getting the VAWA visas.
Mhm.
So with this, how do with these humanitarian cases, what do you want the public to better understand about the people behind them? To, like, if you're before a judge, how do we paint this? Because I think that's what we need to break through the noise, is to realize and humanize these are the victims of domestic violence, or these are the people who need our assistance most.
Excellent question. How do you break through? With my local judges, I slow down. I tell them about my client's history. And I know that my local judges often feel uncomfortable learning about immigration consequences. That is outside their jurisdiction. And I realize that, but I think my local judges need to understand the downstream consequences for the human being standing in front of them. Explaining those situations very candidly, I think, are helpful. Um, I, from time to time, will get teary-eyed in a courtroom proceeding. A long, long time ago, a mentor judge of mine, I was apologizing for being, emotional, and that judge came to me as a friend and mentor later on and said, Elizabeth, when you get that way, don't tamp it down, because we all know that that is when you're saying something incredibly important about your client. So I am an emotional presenter. I will present the story of my client, and I will slow it down both for the local judge and the immigration judge as best I can. These are human beings with stories, and they deserve to be told, and that's why I'm standing there. That's my job.
And so that is important, because it is hard, because though we're supposed to be this I think people sometimes see lawyers as this Teflon. We're supposed, maybe not as human as they realize, but there are times where something really just grabs you, and I think dealing with families in certain situations, especially for me, the victims of domestic violence,
Sure.
and ensuring that they are able to get the assistance through the right immigration steps to be able to stay here along with their children and their family members. And I want to thank you for sharing your perspective. And before we cut to a commercial break, I want to end with this. If you could shape U.S. immigration policy in just a few key ways,
Mhm.
just a few, what changes would you prioritize to better serve immigrant families and American communities alike?
I have a couple, but I think the very first one is recognizing, from my perspective, when you speak with people across various political spectrum, when you're speaking with human beings face to face, we actually have a great deal in common with wanting secure borders, wanting secure communities, wanting opportunities for our children, wanting to help our neighbor who might be food insecure or coming into a new neighborhood. I really don't find that we disagree on as much as we seem to all think we do once we start talking about the human stories and people we know, and then listening to each other about our diverse perspectives. We really are of a country where we want to be safe, secure, and seek opportunity. And so if I could change most of the immigration rules, I'd get rid of the whole code and start again with the fundamental principles and what our goals are. We have patchworked it and band-aided it and made it not function somewhat intentionally, maybe for some economic gain to our country. And I think if we just went back down to the basics of this is what we want to see for our neighbors and our families and our own security, and I think we'd come up with a much better code and a much better process starting all over.
And I couldn't agree with you more. And actually, immigration reform, it needs not reform, it needs a whole renovation, if you will. I am Alina Gonzalez Dockery. I am joined by attorney Maria Elizabeth Trefonas, who is an expert in immigration, criminal, and family. She's giving us these great perspectives. We're going to cut to a quick commercial break, be back. Make sure to tune back in so that we can hear more from Maria.